Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about abandonment issues. People get this wrong all the time, not unlike anxiety or anger. Anxiety and anger are healthy. When you feel angry, these are healthy emotions. These are emotions that we need. They can only be unhealthy based on their context. If you don't understand the anxiety, or if it's about a positive value, something that you want, or you feel threatened by a positive value. Same thing with anger. We need anger in our life, especially to manage anxiety, especially to push through resistance to get what we want. These are crucial emotions, and I mean, it's, a lot of therapists or even prominent therapists or psychologists will infer, or at least imply, we can infer from their words that they imply that anxiety or anger are somehow wrong, but we've got to get this crystal clear. These are nothing wrong with these emotions. They're uncomfortable, but there's nothing wrong, or any other wrong emotion. Oh, I, quote, shouldn't be feeling this way, or this emotion is in no way a reflection of reality, so I shouldn't talk about it. But just because your emotion isn't a valid epistemological device, you don't talk about it in philosophy class, but in the context of your relationships, in the context of connecting with other people, it's very important. And we make the same mistake with abandonment issues. So I tweeted this past week that the problem isn't that you feel abandoned, it's the belief that you shouldn't feel abandoned, or feeling abandoned is wrong. Colloquially, we call this feeling like a loser, or not good enough because somebody doesn't like you, typically a girl, or your father who is distant. He is most likely distant physically, psychologically, and of course our founding myth of Western civilization, one of them, Harry Potter, of course, felt the fan. Okay, Jesus, right? I mean, Jesus famously says, I think he's on the cross, Father, why have you forsaken me? Forsaken is biblical for abandon. So this is all based on something I said in group about how I've dealt with my abandonment issues, and realizing somehow it's not wrong to be abandoned. Well, anyways, what gave me the problem with my abandonment issues, we'll get to it here, isn't that I felt abandoned. The way that I work through my abandonment issues is realize, the problem comes when I try to cover up the abandonment issue. Iatrogenic, that word that we used last week. The cure is worse than the problem. And so I would do all these things to cover up my abandonment issue, but really, the problem is I was, and I thought that was the abandonment issue, but really it was the fact that I was trying to cover it up. So my main issue with women is defensiveness, or was defensiveness, still is, let's be honest, just in a different form. And I would always use humor. Humor was my thing. Humor was my way to not connect with women in a healthy way. Not that humor is wrong, but the way that I would use it, it would be a way to, make women feel something. I saw that as my value. So the funnier I was, I tried to be funnier and funnier, and it worked in a sense. It does work, and you can shock women into liking you. It's not even them liking you, it's just activating the largest part of their brain when they go out that night. Right, this guy activates the most amount of my brain, the most amount of my neurons by saying these shocking things. But the funnier I was, so to speak, the more disconnected I was. It wasn't a genuine connection, right? It was just trying to get a reaction, and what this was trying to do is avoid feeling abandoned by women, which I never really fixed ultimately until, famously, the story. Part of my myth, I guess you could say, the mythology, this is the story I tell myself, is that I really didn't fix this until I went to therapy for drug addiction, which I was never a drug addict. I went in the wrong room. I ended up staying in this therapy for opiate addicts, recovering opiate addicts, people on Suboxone, an outpatient program. And I realized, whoa, I don't have a drug addict issue. I don't have a drug problem, but what I do have is a humor problem. I do have a defense mechanism problem. That's what drug use is. And I never really realized it, not that I have fully processed it yet. I would never claim that. It's always a process, but it's always a process that we're a part of. But I realized, the way that you guys try to avoid feeling this pain of abandonment is by using drugs. And the way that I did it, one way that I did it, this isn't the only way, but one way I tried to avoid it was by using humor. Using humor to get, in this particular case, women to like me. Then another time, I have, why do you always need to say something funny? That's something that a girl said to me one time that really just got through. I could write my story of woman with just a few things that the various women have said to me throughout my 20s mostly. And a girl said that to me one time. It wasn't in a romantic context. It wasn't a date or anything like that. And I don't know if she meant it that way, like something's wrong with you. Why do you always need to say something funny? I doubt that's even what she said, but that's what I remember. That's how I understood what she said. Why do you always need to say something that's funny? It's like, I'm trying to say something funny because I don't feel good enough. And I don't feel good enough because I had this feeling of abandonment that we all feel. Even Jesus feels, and I'm trying to cover it up. And I'm trying to make myself valid by doing something, as opposed to recognizing the fact that sometimes I don't feel valid, and that means we need the approval or lack of disapproval from other people to feel that way. These are issues that we need to process and talk through in a healthy way, to look at the meaning behind them, to look at how these issues developed and how right now they are ultimately our responsibility. Nobody else can deal with them. Even if you aren't the instigator of these issues, you're probably not. You probably got it somewhere in childhood due to poor communication with people who you at least perceive to be authority figures. And it was adaptive for a time. But then you got older. Your intellect grew, but your emotional patterns did not. Your emotional patterns stayed stuck. And so what a lot of guys do to get out of this is they'll say something, affirmations. I am the prize. And it kind of makes sense if you think of yourself as a robot, which a lot of therapists, cognitive behavioral therapists, a lot of mindset bros think of yourself as a robot. Any kind of therapy or self-help influenced by stoicism, you consider yourself a robot. That's the implication. And so you just think, well, if I believe that I'm the prize, then women will think I'm the prize, and they'll respond in kind. But the problem with this is it's not true. That's not how connection between two people work. You are not the prize. That's false. You are a prize to a particular kind of woman. That there's more of those women out there than you would ever need to meet in your lifetime. But so you're not the prize. You're a prize for a particular kind of woman, or even a particular woman if you want to think of it that way. I don't know if that's true. I'll leave that to you to decide. But it's not true, because you're just covering up the issue. You're just feeling this pain of if a woman rejects me, or if somebody else rejects me, if I call it my father, who feels distant, and he just gives the implication that he's too busy for me, he's too busy to talk, it doesn't matter because I'm the prize and he's wrong. I mean, that's great, but that's not how you feel. And that solution, that affirmation, is iatrogenic. It's not really a solution. The cure is worse than the problem. Of course, I'm thinking of this analogy now because there's a newborn around here, but it's the, you're holding a crying baby in your arms, and he's crying because, he just had, a couple of weeks ago, he just had the most stressful day of his life. his first day on this planet outside of the womb and adjusting to that. It's like, you're not going back. I relate with you. You're not going back in the womb. I'm not going back in the womb. I try to go back in the womb by eating 500 Oreos and binging a Netflix show. But it's just a cover. And there's no lesson here. There's no affirmation. There's no way of viewing this really that's going to get you out of it other than the recognition that the lesson is to feel the pain. To feel the pain of what it is to be outside the womb and to let your body acclimate to it. To feel the pain of what it is to feel abandoned and to let your body acclimate to it. Now, a way to do that is to put yourself in front of enough pain. I guess in the context of women, it would be approaching enough women when you just feel that the rejection over and over again. But I did that for years. I mean, I got really good. I mean, not that I was, some great pickup guy or anything like that. That was not true. But I did get good over the years of talking with women, getting them to respond, not connect so much, but respond. Getting a phone number, which is what we did back in the time. I started talking to girls so long ago that I would get a girl's email address. That's what you did back in 2000. Or in the late 90s. That's how long I was at it. And you can get responses. But that's not the same thing as a connection. And the way through that, the way to deal with, so you can put yourself in front of enough women and get rejected. You will get rejected and you will inure yourself to that feeling. But I think in order to fully process it, right? It didn't even get through to me until I went to drug addict therapy. I mean, talk about a message in my life that, that in a sense said all these issues are connected. And talking about women, connecting with women isn't about connecting with women. It is. That's what's happening on the surface. But there's something going on underneath, and you get that when you realize you relate with these opiate addicts, you relate with these heroin addicts, even though you're not a heroin addict. I mean, I'm not cool enough to have ever even tried heroin, so that's one way, right? Just feel the pain of it enough, and that'll help you through it to some degree. But I think if you really want to get clear about this, is you got to get clear about it. You got to understand where these emotional issues come from, where your abandonment issue comes from, why you have it, and you begin to work on it. You begin the process of not trying to get a girl to respond so much, or not trying to get your dad or somebody else to respond so much, so you have somebody in your life to cover up those feelings of abandonment. It's not that, it's you work on the issue. You begin to process the issue. You begin to talk through your emotions in a certain way. And I think once you begin to do that, then any problem you have feeling disconnected and then feelings of abandonment as a result of that is it kind of just goes away. It doesn't go away. You still feel the abandonment. There's still pain, but it's the same pain that I feel being outside my mother's literal womb right now. It's like, I guess I would rather be in a womb of some kind, and I do that, and I make a makeshift womb every once in a while. Aforementioned 50,000 Oreos and Netflix, but I'm outside a womb right now, and I feel okay. But this is what we can help you with here, right? Getting clear about your issue, letting you know, talking about how to process it. That's what we can do. Free consultations, animusempire.com/schedule. Got a lot of fun videos coming up. Got another Simpsons psychoanalysis. That's going to be good. On Homer versus Lisa and the Eighth Commandment. So if you want to go watch that episode now to, bone up on it, so when I make references, it'll make more sense to you. Got a great presentation on Menser, Mike Menser, the bodybuilder, and the 1980 Olympia. The controversial one where, Schwarzenegger entered in the last couple days and he came in and won even though he wasn't in the best shape. Came out of retirement and won. Everybody thinks that Menser, quote, should have won. Should he have? I don't know. I may have a take on that. And it relates to Menser and his objectivism. He was an objectivist. I like objectivism. I've been influenced by it. I think it's a philosophy with great ideas, but it's only a philosophy. It doesn't really get psychology right, and there are premises in objectivism that lead to poor psychological integration, which I think Menser experienced as a result of that, you could say, unjust loss in the 1980 Olympia. So a lot of fun stuff like that. Again, animusempire.com/schedule. And I wish you all the pain and joy you are able to feel that your neurology allows you to feel.